Have you ever seen someone laugh in court and instantly regret it? Well, that's exactly what happened to Linda Thompson, the queen bee of her neighborhood HOA. The courtroom was heavy with tension that morning. Linda sat at the defense table, arms crossed, lips curled into that smug little smirk she wore like a crown. Across from her sat Michael Harris, a quiet man in his 50s, clutching a folder like it was his last lifeline. Linda had dragged Michael to court for one simple reason. He built a small ramp on his front porch. Not for luxury, not for show. His wife, bound to a wheelchair, needed it just to get inside their own home. But Linda, she called it unauthorized construction, claimed it was an eyesore, even accused him of lowering property values. Michael explained that he had submitted the paperwork months ago, but, surprise, surprise, the HOA conveniently lost it. Now he was staring down thousands in fines and even threats of foreclosure. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Harris, do you have proof?" Michael opened his folder with trembling hands and passed it to the bailiff. Inside, a printed email exchange between him and the HOA. Linda leaned back in her chair, glanced at the first page, and let out a little chuckle. "Your Honor," she smirked, "this is nothing but typed-up emails. Anyone could make these at home." The judge's brow furrowed. She flipped to the next page, then the third, and that's when the laughter died. Because there it was, an official HOA approval form for the ramp, dated 7 months earlier. And at the bottom, Linda's own signature in bold black ink. The room froze. Even the bailiff stopped moving. Linda's smirk vanished as her eyes darted around like a cornered animal. "Ms. Thompson," the judge said sharply, "is this your signature?" Linda swallowed hard. It might be." "Might be?" the judge repeated, leaning forward. "This document proves you personally authorized this ramp, which means every fine, every threat you issued afterward was completely without cause." Michael's young attorney, barely out of law school, smiled for the first time that day. "Your Honor, we request all fines be voided immediately, and the HOA sanctioned for harassment." The gavel came down. "Approved. Furthermore, Ms. Thompson, your position as HOA president will be reviewed by the board." Michael looked back at his wife in the gallery. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they weren't from fear. They were from relief. As Linda slumped in her chair, her so-called reign over the neighborhood was officially over. But now another question loomed. How did Michael win? Was it really just because Linda signed a piece of paper 7 months prior? Well, not quite. Let me explain. You see, the whole case was actually a test, sort of an experiment to see if the system still worked, if the rules actually applied to everyone equally, and all signs pointed to no. First, the emails themselves were heavily redacted. When Michael received the initial complaints about his ramp, he saved copies. Only problem was, the HOA redacted key parts of those emails, things like dates, names, even their own stated reasons for the complaints. But here's the thing. When you intentionally hide information that could prove you wrong, you kinda already lost the case before it began. Then came the approval form. Remember that one? The one that started it all? See, when it comes to legal documents, you have to date them. It's a must. And that date carries weight. Why? Because if the document is backdated, that's fraud. Simple as that. However, all entries on the form were dated several days after Michael submitted it, meaning the HOA didn't approve it right away. They waited 2 weeks, and not for a good reason either. At first, the reason for the delay was conveniently missing, but under a Freedom of Information Act request, Michael got a copy of the minutes from that meeting. And what does it say? Oh, that's right. The entry was approved unanimously. Yeah, unanimously. Except according to the HOA's own bylaws, they couldn't do that. You see, most HOAs operate like this. Bylaws require a supermajority, usually 2/3, to approve any changes. But in this case, they only had 3 members present at that meeting. 2 would have been enough to pass it, but where was the third? Oh, that's right. That would be Linda, the third HOA member who wasn't present at the meeting, which meant that approval was invalid. In fact, it was illegal. But why? Why go through all this trouble? What was the HOA trying to hide? Well, thanks to Michael's relentless digging, he found out. You see, the HOA had sent out a mass letter warning everyone about modifications to their homes, especially ramps. Then later, they voted to enforce a new rule requiring a permit for any alteration, but they wouldn't apply that new rule retroactively, at least not on paper. But when it came to Michael, they tried to make him jump through hoops, probably hoping he'd just go away. But Michael was persistent. He kept digging, kept pushing until he found out the real reason behind their actions. Their bylaws clearly stated that the HOA couldn't legally force anyone to alter their home, especially not for the benefit of others. But guess who changed that? That's right. Linda. She single-handedly amended the bylaws a month prior, making the HOA more powerful than they already were. However, she never filed that change with the county clerk. If she did, it would be public record. But you know what isn't public record? The secret minutes of an illegal HOA meeting that somehow made her the HOA president. Talk about irony, right? Now, you're probably thinking, well, so what? Who cares if she was illegally president? But here's the thing. It wasn't just about Linda being president. It was about what that meant. You see, the HOA was incorporated as a nonprofit. And when you run a nonprofit, you can't benefit yourself or any other insiders. The idea is to serve the community, not pad your own pockets. So when Linda illegally amended the bylaws and took over the HOA, she gained a lot of power that she used to screw over her own neighbors. Meanwhile, the real HOA president was totally oblivious to all of this. He had no clue that his own wife was leading a gang of busybodies on his behalf. But now he did. And after hearing the evidence, he was furious. "I had no idea," he whispered, face ashen. "I mean, I knew she was headstrong. But this goes too far." "Don't worry," Michael said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You won't have to deal with her much longer. The board will remove her. Mark my words." "Yeah," the real HOA president sighed, rubbing his temples. "Yeah, I think they better." He paused, then added quietly, "She always did have a big head. Guess now it'll be a little smaller." Now we've all heard about HOA horror stories, those neighborhoods where nobody dares put up a swing set or plant a vegetable garden for fear of fines. But this story raises an important question. What's the point of having rules if only some people have to follow them? Or put another way, how do you stop someone who bends the rules when it benefits them but cracks down hard when it doesn't? Well, if this story has taught us anything, it's that sometimes you need to fight fire with fire. Most people think of the law as this unassailable thing, like gravity or the laws of thermodynamics. But it's not. The law is basically just rules made up by people, rules that are interpreted by other people. And when those people start playing favorites, sometimes you have to call them out. This is America, after all. We don't bow down to kings or queens. We hate to break it to you, Linda. And speaking of breaking it to people, it's time for you to face the music. You abused your power, ignored the bylaws, and even threatened your neighbors. But now the music's stopped. The party's over. Your reign of terror in that neighborhood is officially over. As for Michael, well, he proved that one person with a good heart and a bad back can take on an entire HOA and win. Sometimes you just need a good lawyer, a mountain of patience, and a willingness to dive deep into the details like a truly epic case of David versus Goliath. And let's be real, who doesn't love that story?